welcome to the couch. This is Lextopia.
CC Fierce.
I'm going to give it to you. I know what you want.
Hey.
What are we talking about today, Carlie?
So today we are talking about building an effective team, whether you are working on a passion project with your friends, whether you are working, okay, Mom, whether you're working.
Here moving around. Can't give
the
kids
mood
rolling
today.
chairs.
You cannot, especially this
I'm
one
trying
like
to
rocks
put
back
way
and
more
forth.
effort into being more still. That's why I'm like, oh man, I'm being still for once.
Yeah, no, I move too much. In general, in business school, one of my classmates, she was like, I can't sit next to you because you move too much.
I know, that's how I am too. I'm sorry for cutting you off though.
No, you good. So whether you're building a passion project with your friends, whether you are trying to expand your business, whatever it is, we're talking about ways to build an effective team. And I thought this was poignant for today because Alexia and I are both in this process in a little bit different ways. And all of us work in teams, whether we, by choice or by circumstance, but we all work in teams. And I think it's important when thinking about ways to be more effective and efficient and make a difference. It's important to think about these.
Mm-hmm. And so in this case, like we're thinking about teams that we're putting together, right? So yes, we've all been part of teams. And so we're not really going to talk about like, what should you bring to the team to make it work, all that necessarily. But for people who want to or are building their own teams for projects or for work. In my case, it's in like a bunch of different areas that I'm part of teams or have to have teams built or have to build teams that are efficient. Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking about teams, what do you mean then? Like in your case, like what types of teams?
Teams that I'm on where there's not really a hierarchy. Like when you think about, I forgot the word, but flat team. So like we're all pretty much on the same level, like working with things, but also
like
thinking
a board?
about like a board for a business or a nonprofit, but also thinking about like top down, like if I'm building a team that I'm going to manage for my business, or because I do have a strategy and business development role for a company, like what that team looks like, the team that I work with.
Mm-hmm. And are those different?
Yeah.
I mean, what they look like might be different, but do these applications apply the same, you think?
Oh, I think they do, especially if you're like put onto a board, or if you are, choosing your board, or if you're, hiring people to help expand your business. I think that they go across the board.
Because even if you're part of the board, I think in both you're still like leadership. Because even if you're on the board, you all are just have more say versus the other way, you may have a little bit more responsibility. But in both cases, you have to come to the table with your thoughts about how you want things to progress and how you guys want to work together. Do you want to specifically talk about the teams you're on?
So I am on the board. Well, it's because I didn't type mine down. Okay.
I was about to say, because you kind of said parts. That's why I was like, I don't know if I'm just making you repeat the same thing or if there was more.
No. I can talk about them. So I run business development and strategy for a company, and there's probably 15 employees, but there's like a team of 3 that we work on, the owner and then the marketing person.
So you're working with them, or like you're telling that team what to do?
We all do the thing.
Oh,
we all work together. I'm on the board of 2 different nonprofits. There's more teams that I'm a part of, but those are like the 3 that I have more of an agency of power, role, I guess. What are some of the ones that you're on? Oh, and Carlie's Couch, of course.
With my company, Cap Social, we have a team. So I work with a team of contractors, and I've always had folks that I work with. But like you said, that this episode is timely for me too, because the biggest thing for me has been like, I know I need teams, I need people. It's just this thing where like you want to do everything yourself, or not even that you want to, but you might feel like you need to, which maybe is more so what's accurate in my case. And so I'm really like trying to develop more of a culture of, okay, I have these ideas, but it's not all dependent on me to do everything, delegating more. And so with my company team, that's right now we're a group of 5 people. That I'll probably use in a lot of my examples moving forward with this. I am developing a Twitter software for, it kind of goes with my company, but it's kind of an outside thing. And so for this, I have a outside team of partners I worked with before, one guy's a friend, and he brought in somebody he thinks will be relevant for this project. And so that's a project where we're all kind of working on. And I'm, I guess, semi-lead because it was my idea, and I'm working with them to progress it. Carlie's Couch, we both have to come together and think about what we want to talk about, how we want to execute, what goals we have for this, and what we want to do. So that's working with another person in that case. And then I'm on a lot of other people's teams. So in which I do still kind of have the power to bring in the resources or bring in people and things that I think will be helpful. But in the same way, like with my Twitter software, I have that going. Some of my friends have, whether it's events that they're working on or other projects that they have, and they just like using me as somebody to bounce ideas or to help find, like I said, resources or people or whatever. So being part of other people's team is actually very enlightening and helps me with how I want to do things with the teams that I air quote lead too.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I thought of like 4 other teams. But now that y'all have an idea of like where we're coming from with teams, I think it's important to think through like what makes a successful team, like what makes an effective team to you.
You asking me now? So what characteristics a team should have, or what how do you know the team's
successful?
effective?
What makes a team successful?
Okay, so I would say the way I'm going to answer that is like what types of people and what things I need to be present out of members in the team, and or as the leader of the team. So the first thing I think for sure is having a team where they have the agency to make decisions. They have the agency to put their own spin on things. They have the agency to approach and attack things in a way that makes sense for them. I think that's important for me for sure, because everybody doesn't work the same way. And also I know myself in that sometimes I make things more difficult than they need to be, or I'll have a process of how to do things. And so what I'd like to do is, talk about like, hey, this is what I've been doing, and this is how I do it, or this is what needs to be done. Do it how you need to do it. Or, just hit me if you want some ideas or something, right? Like let people work through it themselves, so that they can have ownership of what they're working on in the team. Another thing is having a really clear vision overall. So like everybody actually knows what you're trying to do. And I think that was the biggest problem with me in the past with teams is that, it's like I'm the only one who kind of knows where I want the company to go, or I don't even really know myself. So it's like, we're always attacking short-term things or like, what we need to do right now, but it's not really setting it up for effective like long-term systems and processes, things like that. That being said, what makes a team successful is also having those processes and stuff in order. I don't want to go too into stuff that I might go into later. And a huge thing with teams that makes them successful is people actually having a clear idea of what the tasks are. I think a lot of times we think, oh man, I have all these tasks to do, and you like give stuff away, but then it's like they don't know which things are more important, which things should I be doing first, which things should I do a certain way or this way, and like understanding like what's the deadlines of it and like what do they need to do. I think a lot of times we just give stuff away and then it's not very clear, and so stuff just kind of is there. And also making sure it's an environment where everybody can express themselves and their thoughts and opinions and their ideas about what's going on.
No, I love that. That's always one of mine, making sure that people feel heard and feel like they have the space to speak up. Like, actually, I don't agree with that. I think this is a better way. Like, I think that that's how we get to the best outcomes.
And I always tell people, like, please, like, tell me. Please like, I be trying to get them to speak up and they don't be wanting to say nothing, but it's like, all right. But I also realize, like, every time I think I'm delegating, I was like, yo, I'm still not delegating enough. Like, I'm still saying, like, I'm going to start this and then give it to you. And it's like, nah, you, like, start it. You could do it and see what happens from there.
A lot of my definitions of like an environment and what makes a successful team are similar to Alexia's, but like on the outcome, like we accomplished the goal that we set out to achieve while simultaneously like elevating each other, like helping all of us win. Like we're all growing, we're all getting better, we're all doing these things, like working, expanding our strengths, getting better at our weaknesses, doing all of these things. Like I think that is a team.
Yeah, that's a great thing to add on to what makes a team successful, or I don't know if that makes it more effective per se, but I think that is a great quality of your team if everybody's winning from it, like what you're working on, for sure. And it doesn't feel like they're just doing something that's helping you per se.
Exactly. Like it's an environment that gives back to everybody, which is what we try to create. So we talked about these successful teams and these effective teams, but how do you actually build a team? Lex spoke a little bit about it, but for me, it's like thinking or creating the vision. So having this vision that people can be tied into, making sure that those people are in alignment, and like a clarity of goals and strategic overview, and then making sure that you are maintaining that environment and improving on it.
But even going back to more of the nitty gritty of it, like technically, when you're building a team, are you saying that you're developing the vision and all that first before you pull people in?
It depends on what you're doing. And so I think there's not a right way or a wrong way, but I'm thinking about if there's already this vision and goal, like then bringing people in. But there's two ways, like if I think I have an idea about something and I know I want to build it out, I can bring in a team and we can all iron it out together. Or there can be this project. Let's say I get a huge contract and I need people on my team making sure that my messaging and my vision is clear. So I think it really, like, regardless of
sometimes
which way,
you need just people to carry it out and work and
exactly
execute, which when you're doing stuff with like software and technical things, I think they very much understand that. They're coming in like, what do you want me to code? What do you want me to do? Boom, boom, boom. And then it's like, like you're saying, depending on what you're doing, because as I transition more into agency with Cap Social, those ideas I had about the vision or whatever, I'd always been like, I'm kind of clear, but not really. And so I opened that up to everybody to kind of like, hey, we're developing this vision statement or the value propositions, all of those things, taglines and stuff like that. Like kind of opening that up, like, hey, I want it to say this, I want to make sure this message comes across, but having everybody kind of help be part of that as well. But that's because I think with that team, it is more of a strategic team as well, to where I value their creativity and their input in those spaces. And so that's why I'm like, I don't have to come up with all of that either. But for some things, so like with the Twitter software stuff, I need the team to help me like research people, things, features, whatever we're going to do. But then it's like, as that team grows, you're just paying people to create what we made or what we want to make.
Exactly. And I think either way, like I said, there's not a right way or a wrong way, but it all starts out with like the why. Like, why are we here? Like if we're building a team, why? Because, I want to create a game. Okay, cool. There's something that brings people in. And so just having a little bit of clarity on that, not necessarily down to like the mission statement and the vision statement, not all that, but there's an idea. There's a reason why people are in the room.
Well, what about with Carlie's Couch? How can you use us as an example with this first kind of parts?
So if y'all are later subscribers to Carlie's Couch and missed the first episode, how the podcast started was Alexia was like, hey, I have this business or this idea. And I was like, okay, cool. And I came like ready to help her. And she was like, all right, we're going to do a podcast. It's going to be called Carlie's Couch. And you sold me on the vision.
I said you should have a podcast.
Oh, well.
I did say I was like, we should do a podcast. But I kind of was like, I wanted to be like your kind of thing, I guess, in a way. But I guess that's like kind of had the idea, and it's just, do you want to be a part of it? And then figuring out how can we work together to make it happen.
Exactly.
And be consistent.
And because you were just like, we have all these great conversations, like we should be able to share that with people, like meaningful things that are, that might help other people. And I was like, absolutely. And so that's kind of how it grew. But there was an idea, like some type of vision to start building the team.
Yeah. So we had that idea first versus like us being friends, just be like, oh, what can we do? Although maybe we always kind of had that in our mind.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we tried to force anything to happen. It just kind of happened, and then we were on board with it. How do you know who to bring into a team, whether you're hiring them or want to work with them? How do you know who those people are? And then I think we're going to get into like, where do you find them?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's really important to make sure that they're in alignment, like with what we're doing. So you're great to do the podcast with because you're very self-aware. You're always growing. You're always pouring into other people. You care about the community. Like you're literally doing all of these things that are the vision of what we want to do. And also making sure that like, I want to work with you and not even on like, and I know people are like, oh, well, when you hire people, you might not like everybody. Yeah, but they're going to have at some level, some standard, like they meet a basic standard of not being an asshole or a basic standard of being a decently good
Yeah, but
person.
how do you
Even
know
if
that? Because you're acting almost as if like, oh, pulling from people you know. A lot of teams are built from hiring people or pulling in people because of skill set and other things too.
and even companies say like, oh, how are you a good fit for us? And I think that that's part of the sell. Whether they lie or not is whatever, but I think not even just people that I know, but there is a sell for like, how do you fit in here? Like, do you fit these things? Like, do you, like, these are our core values. Like, do you meet these? Are these values for you? And like I said, a lot of times people in hiring process, like, oh, well, why do you want to work at IHOP? Because pancakes are my number one goal. Like, I love,
Need
like,
that
people be
check.
lying that shit. Exactly. I need to eat and I need to pay bills. And that's why the fuck I'm here. Y'all posted an ad.
That's it.
That's why the fuck I'm here. I need to check.
Let's just keep it real.
But when I think that a lot of, I think I'm able to make that distinction because all of the projects, like I'm blessed right now, all the projects I'm working on are purpose-filled projects for me. And so like I can work with people that are in my head like align with that.
Looking at the teams you're part of now, or were you the one who was brought into the team, or are you the one who started the team?
A little bit of both. All of my
Which ones are teams that you started?
I would say we co-started this one, Holistically Dope. I started, and I guess co-started like I have an entrepreneurship curriculum with some of my friends that we all kind of started together. And I got brought on to like the gym. Got brought on to the nonprofit boards. But I was with one of them when they were starting. Like I helped them on the back end, like start a lot of this stuff. But I would say there's a good mix of things that I've actually started versus being pulled into.
Okay. And I was just asking that because I'm thinking about like what the differences are. Like in what cases are you pulling other people into it? And how you're using your ideas of alignment, purpose, and like, are those people who are just like people you knew, and then you said, oh yeah, because you fit into this alignment and purpose, you're bringing them into the team.
And so I'm thinking about it in like a contractor perspective. So if let's say we have a big event coming up and we need a yoga instructor or we need an accountant or we need these, it's people that I've met or seen or respect for their fruit and what they're doing. And I'm like, yo, they would be great for this.
Okay. So you tend to pull in and look at people that you see or that are around you.
Yeah, people that I see or have some type of connection to, have networked with, maybe went to business school with, like things like that. Okay. What about you? Like, how do you know who to hire or work with? Because you said you have like all your contractors and...
Yeah, I never know who to hire. And I've hired a lot of people who ended up not working out well. And only a couple... like outside of like right now, so thinking in the past, only a couple who are like so incredible that it like blew my mind, and it's really hard to hire people, and not really to their fault, to my own also, because a lot of times it starts with you and like being clear again on what you want to do, what you need, how you're moving forward, all of those things, right? And even being a leader. But what I'm looking for now, and in my experience of like a lot of like bumps, and like I've had people who just disappear, I've had people who like they want to do stuff so much, but like they're just not good. Like they don't spell things right. Like just weird stuff like that. Or people who transition into other things and like they had other opportunities come up. And so like, it's like, you know, filling that in, always having to find new people and fill that in. And so when I'm looking for people that I want to work with or have on my teams, I'm looking especially for self-starters. And that's based off of my, my own quality of, I don't want them to have to wait for me. So, and I know I'll have a million things going on. So I like working with folks who, what about this? Or I had this idea, or they know stuff is coming up, but they're not waiting for me to have to put it in Asana, or you know what I mean? Like they hit me and like keep me on edge. Like that's good for me. People who have actual education / experience in that field. So if I'm right now like about to talk to a guy about video editing, or you know, it's like what types of programs can you use? What stuff can you do? It's cool if we're like in alignment with vision and all that, but like I need people who can have like certain skills. And so that's very important for me. Again, understand what do I need them to be able to do so I can clearly be able to express that and see examples of that as well from them. Because I think a lot of times there's so much talk and they may believe in themselves or whatever, but like then you see their stuff and it's like, that's not like that awesome. So being sure that you actually pay attention to what fruit you mentioned that they actually produce. I like working with people who ask a lot of questions, and It's important that they have availability that I need for what they're doing. I think that's important too, because a lot of people will be excited to work with you or join in on something, but they don't really have the time, interest that they actually care about these things that we're working on. And also with me, and because most of my people are contractors and it's something that I know like they're not going to be with me forever, probably, I always try to make sure that I am aware of and understand what projects they're working on, what they are interested in, where they're heading, and what they want to do. So I understand, all right, how can we make sure that you get something out of this that's helpful for you moving in that direction, and making sure I'm not like putting you in some mundane role where this is also another like, I don't really want to do this. Granted, if somebody, they want the money or they want to do the work to do the work because it's work, that's fine with me if they get things done and get them done well. So I don't need you to be like, oh man, social media is my life or marketing or whatever. Like that doesn't really matter to me because it's not my life. But I think for me, it's a lot of those more like technical things that I look for when I want to work with people. And it's also like, how do you deal with conflict? So if we disagree or if there's an issue, like how do you deal with that is important as well.
I have a question. Because I did mention fruit, but I mean, people having the experience and being good at it is a baseline. But from those people, I weed out like based on all of those other things. So if you have so let's say that there's like 5 candidates that you have that are all have the experience, have the education, say that they're self-starters, like have showed you things, like how do you pick between those candidates?
Personable, having personality. So I have to have like a couple conversations with them, and like I can tell in a convo. Like I spoke to a girl maybe a month ago, and I told her I would circle back around with her now at the top of the year, who lives in LA, and so I was on the phone with her. She's in the USC program. They have a social media program now. And so, talking to the person, I just want to understand like how you speak, what you care about. And it's not even that we're talking so much about social media, but understanding people is important for me. There's a lot of people who you may be good at a job, but you aren't good at reading rooms, situations, speaking to people, things like that, which is very important, I think, as well, because if I can communicate well with you, then we should be okay. So a lot of times it's that. And like people have a lot of difficulty just being expressive or talking. And so you can kind of tell a lot of those things as far as not necessarily the full alignment, vision, all of that. Like it really does take time, I think, but at enough level to understand that, okay, we can get along, we could talk through things, and you think for yourself, speak for yourself, and so forth. Like you have an idea about how audiences are receptive to whatever the work is that we're doing.
No, I really like that. How do you find these people like that you've hired? And if you have a couple of good ways to maybe meet them that you can share.
So when I first started working with people, I hired my first couple of virtual assistants through, the name's changed to now, I think it's Upwork, unless it's changed again, but Upwork and like programs online where contractors or people looking for work are putting up their information. You can put up a listing and you can have people kind of bid for it. So they'll say like, well, I want at least this much an hour. This is what I do. This is how I can do it. And that way you're really, sometimes you don't want to work with people just right around you, or sometimes you need fresh people with those real skills like you don't know. And so a lot of those people can come in, and I've worked with people through that, and then they end up staying with me for a few years. So that's a way to just fresh out, like find people. Another way is through social media. I've connected with a lot of people that I've worked with through social. Whether it's because I said like, oh man, I need this or that, and people stepped up to it, and a lot of times it's because I'm seeing other people's art, like if they did graphic design or something like that, like you're seeing it, and so I'm kind of keeping it in my mind. I have Twitter list for graphic designers, I have Twitter list for programmers, I have Twitter list for photographers, and all those different types of things. And so I can always go back and look, like I'm always paying attention to what people are doing, and then it's a matter of pulling them in for something. So social media is really good for that. Another thing is through recommendations. So the girl I was just talking about, one of my marketing, I hate saying girl, but the young lady who does marketing with me now, who's already on my team, she's one who's like, oh yeah, my friend is in that program, and like she's in LA if you need somebody more like in person and for stuff like that. And so that's a recommendation to where, off of that trust, I have a conversation, see some of her stuff, and then be like, okay, this is worth moving forward. And so I think those are my top ways. And going along with social media, I'll say like if I'm at anything or meet people through friends or whatever, again, it tends to be like, all right, we probably connected and now I kind of see stuff and that makes me think about you if I need something or I'm building the team or whatever.
And I like that you answered that. I feel like you're more experienced with actually like hiring people and things like that.
It's hard. You never know what you're about to get, man, for real. Like, it don't matter what people say. Like, you really don't know.
Yeah, which is wild. And I think it's interesting because of this, like all the people that I work with on the teams, it's from being in the right place at the right time. And I know that sounds crazy, but I am so serious. Or someone referred me like word of mouth, or they introduced me, or, oh, you need a production manager. My homegirl does that. And if not, she has somebody who lives closer to you. So it's always like someone reaching out and handing things. But I've met those people, like being intentional about it is going to those networking events and trying to build meaningful relationships.
Yeah. And I think it depends on what you need, because sometimes we need another mind. And then, like you said, sometimes you need, somebody to be technical, or they don't need to be like, I don't know, what's the right way to describe it? Like, they don't have to be like, we're one in our mind. Like, sometimes you just need like a project manager or
exactly.
like, just answering emails or whatever, stuff like that, which is where like Upwork was perfect for that, because it's like, boom, like they know what time it is. They're doing what they need to do. It ain't dealing with your friends like, hey, girl, you going to get that done? Like, it's different.
They send you your invoice. It's 10 hours. Is this?
Right. Which is another thing, too, is flexibility that I hadn't mentioned, but flexibility with the people I work with, because sometimes there's some BS happens, or it's like, people I can be able to work with or talk to, or it's like, yo, send me the invoice now, or hey, I might be like a week late on this invoice because, one of my clients, something's going on with them or whatever. But being flexible and having a mutual respect, because you're not ever trying to play people on your team, respecting them as people, and like, you know what I mean? Like just being real with them and open with those kind of conversations, if you do have to have those kind of conversations too. But yeah, man, you just need different types of people, and sometimes you meet them in different ways. I think the ones who are like your friends or kind of connections, you tend to bring in because they do have the same values and ideas and at that level. So it's just different, like what you need.
Yeah, I really like that. So we talked about getting the right people and what that looks like in the hiring process and where you can meet them. How do you determine like their roles on your teams? And we've talked about different kinds of teams. And so can you walk us through that? Like, how do you determine roles and how do you delegate responsibilities?
Well, for me, in the past, and I'm going to talk about from the Cap Social standpoint, in the past, I had tried to bring in people and get things done, like looking at just a list of tasks, like we need to get all these things done, so I'm bringing in people who can help do them. And now I have better clarified from the inside first what roles I need. And the thing is, they'll overlap, right? So I suggest for anybody, especially if this is about your company or a project that's something to make money, that you develop an organizational chart. And the E-Myth is good for that. He has a good layout. But I kept finding like, these layouts don't really work for what I'm doing, or they don't really work for me, or they're doing too much. Like, I don't need like CEO, CMO, this. Like, if I'm not really there, then like, how can I make roles that make sense for how we operate as a team? And so I developed like a new organizational chart that worked for me. And now I'm like, oh, I need these people, I need these roles. And so what I did was I took that organization chart, I did a brain dump of just like, these are all things I need to get done every day or every week, like tasks. And it's like, all right, which task goes to which roles? And those roles look like maybe it's like strategists, marketing, like different types of things, specific like social media account managers, stuff like that. And it's not too many, but they all are internal and external. So by that, I mean, in that role, you're helping with the biz dev of Cap Social, and you're helping with that client doing that client stuff too.
Oh, nice.
So it's like a twofold. And what happens is I'm able to put in those tasks into where those roles fit, so that now as I'm going to my team, like, all right, this is the roles that we need. So like, where do you see yourself? So like with, as we've been adjusting, like I asked Brittany, who does my marketing stuff, like, all right, which of these types of roles do you really feel like, just looking at the descriptions and stuff, most comfortable with? She's like, well, I kind of like this, and this. Okay, cool. So now I could take my task and like kind of fill them in a way that makes sense for her. But also, even though I'm filling in multiple roles, it's like I have people, she may be doing this and she may be this too, but we're offloading so that we're creating those processes so she can offload that for me to bring somebody else in so she can really step into like that main one that she wants, right? And so there's roles that just because there's stuff that has to get done. And so instead of having to like try to hire a zillion people at once, it's like we're building this out as we go. And so I want to make sure that people have a choice of like what they're interested in when they look at this layout, but also working with them to understand like, hey, but we got to get some of this other stuff done too. So it's this role and this role, but let's work to create a process so you can get out of this one and do that other one.
No, that makes sense. I like that a lot. And I think it's different like when you're like hiring specifically for a social media manager versus like what I was thinking is, you know, coming onto this board and we're all looking at each other like, okay, what are our strengths and weaknesses? Like if we're doing this project or we have this event or we have this thing.
Then why are you on the board though?
What do you mean?
Like, how did you bring the people on? If it's now we got to talk about what are we going to do?
Well, so for example, the board of the nonprofit, like you can just be on the board, on the strategy board, but then you get a big event or you get a new client or you get a thing. And it's like, okay, well, now that we have this thing, how do we move forward? Or the other nonprofit that I'm on, you have a vision. It doesn't work out. Like we got 3 grants last year for one of the nonprofits that I'm on. And then the way that we did our planning last year and what got us the grants is not working. And so it's like, oh, okay, back to the drawing board. Now let's figure out how to do this. And so it's been important for us to go through and get to know each other's like strengths and weaknesses, like our experience. So
you can
like,
delegate in a way
so
that
we
makes
can
sense.
delegate in a way that makes sense. But what we all did together is what you mentioned, that brain dump, like, okay, if we're planning this thing, these are all the things that we have to get done. So who's going to be in charge of this? Who's going to be in charge of this? One of us needs to be a project manager to make sure that all of these things are getting done. And so we did the same thing, but we extrapolated into it. And that's
what
why
I've had to do now that I kind of had some team and then I'm restructuring. So like if I already have some people now with them, yeah, we do have to like, where are we fitting in as we're creating this? But then now with that being tighter, I'll know exactly what I need to pull in, you know?
Exactly.
So like those first people are kind of like, you know, where it may not seem not rocky, but like it might not feel as clear, like I'm this or I do this.
Yeah.
But like that's now what we've established so that moving forward for me, it's not going to be like, oh, you're cool, come on. And like, where do you want to do? Where do you fit in? It's, hey, I need somebody who could do this
exactly.
and this. Like, and that's what I need.
And I think that's also different specifically for not like nonprofits or maybe like boards. Like they're not like your CMO and your CTO and all of those things, but people who are flexible and adaptable and have a variety of skills that you know will follow through on different things so that when stuff changes inevitably like it does, they're able to mold and form and help you like switch directions.
And I feel like I'm always maintaining relationships with people and always, as I'm meeting new people, kind of keeping them in mind moving forward, because there's some people like I want to work with and I'm, you know, you just don't force it. Like I'm not sure where, so I'm not just trying to pull people in and build the team just to build a team. And I don't want people in before I need them. Like I don't need to bring you in, give you all this information, and then you're just sitting there, you know what I mean? Like until we're ready for that to happen. And so a lot of it is building, like knowing how you need to build, whether you need a lot of people, whether you need a few people to get the systems and then add people. And I think that's based on, you know, whatever your end goal is and what type of team this is and what you're trying to accomplish.
And I think if you're stuck like, well, how am I supposed to know if I need people or don't need people? Like that would be a great time to outsource for someone just to like a consultant or somebody who can kind of walk you through something that you've already been like that they've already been through. Because you're saying, well, you don't want to bring in too many people, you don't want to bring them in too soon. But let's say, for example, I'm starting a company and I've never done this.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How do you know if you should build a team?
And that's what I'm saying. Like you might not know. Like I might, because for example, like I don't actually employ anybody under Holistically Dope at the moment. So it's just me. So technically, it's not even company. It's just me acting as myself. And I don't feel comfortable hiring people yet because I don't have all of my systems in place of like what that looks like. And I'm not clear on a couple of things, but I think if I was starting a company like outside of my own, like that's why I said it might be smart to bring in someone who is a consultant or somebody who has already been there. Like whenever I get to that point, whenever I have what I think I need to have in place, I might call you and be like, hey, you know, I think now might be a good place to hire somebody. What are your thoughts?
But I would actually challenge that to say, how do you know you need a team is when you have too many things you just can't do. Like you can't do everything. And sometimes, and what I had to kind of face and what I'm doing right now is like, I kept thinking the same thing. Like, oh, I got to get the systems together. I got to get the system together, do this and this. And at some points, like, I can't get the fucking systems together because I can't do this and do this and do this. And I brought the team in and had them start making the systems. Yeah. And so even with the people who are there, what they're doing is, hey, let's figure out like what's the best way to do this process and document that for me. Like document that. And now, so they're kind of doing it with me. And that doesn't mean you have to have like 10 people or anything. Like it might be, I think the first step again is if you have too many tasks, what you should do is get a virtual assistant first. And that can be the thing on Upwork. And that could be the person who's $2 an hour, or it could be the person who's like $10 an hour, or it could be a friend or whatever. And it could be 2 hours a week or an hour a week or whatever. But if you have your list of, hey, these are all the things that need to get done, one of those might be like proposals getting sent out or writing proposals, right? So maybe what you do is you get somebody like, hey, can you make a template for me so that it's easier for you to do that? Yeah. Or maybe like for me, I let my emails pile up, or I used to. So the first thing I had the lady, one of my first virtual assistants do is like just actually answer the emails. Like when people are hitting me up and like, hey, from LinkedIn or whatever, like, can we set up a call, whatever, set the call, like set these calls. So now I'm just actually having stuff on my calendar and I can just do it. Right. And instead of me like waiting 2 weeks later and then being like, hey, sorry about the tardiness. We can talk next week, And so it's like just knowing where are you effective and like what things do you, I don't know, not even not want to do, but like those things that they can do. Once you have enough, 2-3 things that somebody else can do, you can get somebody to start doing it.
And see, that's where I'm saying sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Like you saying that, I'm like, oh, I definitely could do that. And it would help me out immensely. It would help me out immensely.
I would say write a list of all the things you do every day, every week that you do / need to get done. Mm-hmm. And then it's which of those things can you kind of offload if it makes sense. So sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it is like, I just need to work harder or do more, whatever. But sometimes that momentum or that little push kind of helps you too. Like if you have somebody else and you're like, oh, like let me actually do what I need to do. Yeah. And so I kind of like that about my team now. And the more responsibility I give them, the more I realize like it helps me to do better because, if I'm having meetings almost every day with a different person, then we have our group meetings and we're talking about like, where are you? What are you doing? And they're counting on me to finish stuff or do stuff too. Mm-hmm. That helps give me a good push. The only reason I can do this podcast is because it's somebody else. Like I wouldn't do one by myself because I wouldn't be on here every week. Like I just wouldn't, because it's too easy to not, right? And like to not let that be a top thing. So I think it kind of forces you to move in some ways, but if it's not organized, it's worse than being by yourself. So you can't, you're right. Some things you gotta know, like where you want to go and you gotta know what needs to get done. But like, that's it. And then somebody can start doing it.
Exactly. I love that. And shout out to accountability. Yeah. When we first said we were going to do this podcast once a week, I didn't know what that meant, but I'm really proud of it. And I'm really glad that I do have someone to hold me accountable. See, I didn't, but I'm glad. And here we are. So once you know that you need a team or once you have a team, I think it's important to build a solid foundation. Like you said, it can be worse to have a team and not have your shit together. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that, you have your values, goals, but everybody knows their expectations, like the systems of work together, or they know that they're supposed to be developing that and have everybody committed in it.
And we can use us as an example too of how we're like, all right, now like all this editing and stuff, it's like, well, let me start writing it out, like write out what the process is so that somebody else can help do stuff, whether they're there yet, not there, whatever. It's very helpful with, especially if you're a solopreneur or this is like some project or something where you're it's mostly you, and you have most of the responsibility, that you take that extra time to like write down how you're doing what you're doing so that you can start to offload it that way versus somebody else coming in.
I never thought of doing that until you and I started talking about it. Because in my head, like being a solopreneur, I think we get so used to doing everything by ourselves that you just automatically do everything by yourself. And sometimes that, I would say a lot of the time that shoots us in the foot because then we get scared to delegate and then you're not able to expand because you physically cannot do everything by yourself.
Yeah, or you can't stop. Like if I can't sit down for a day and chill, or if I can't be sick for a day and everything's going to fall apart, like how effective is your business? And even with my teams, I want to be able to build a business where my teams can function and they're clear. if I'm not there, you know what I mean? Like, and not for like some long period of time, but like if, one day it's like, oh man, like, I can't meet today, but you know what you're working on or whatever. And so for me, it has been a lot more of getting that vision and long-term stuff out of my head, and also getting everybody all together, because if I'm having a meeting with this person, meeting with this person, meeting with this person, it's like they just know what they're doing. But with the sense of everything coming all together, I feel like it just works better, like actually moving forward and like building culture and, having an understanding of like why we're doing this, how we're doing it, what's our tone, approach, and even knowing that there are other people working too and doing stuff, or that they can count on this other person. So now if I have like the video editor, and now if I have the graphic designer, it's not, oh, I'm talking to you about your project and then I'll talk to her. It's like, no, now I'm like, all right, so talk to her and get her to design what you need to get designed, right? Like, just let me know what y'all doing.
Yeah, take me out the middleman.
Yeah, so I can kind of back out a little bit. And then at least that gives you the opportunity to see, like, all right, so now are they going to waste a zillion hours, or are they going to come up with something that's like, dang, that sucks? And then it's like, all right, let's revisit. How can we do this again to where, maybe I'm giving a little bit more direction or something, and you just constantly see like, how do you need to refit yourself into these positions or into what's happening so that you're getting results. And it may just be different based on the people, the overall team, or whatever. But just kind of paying attention to the people and like respecting the people is so important.
I love that. And I remember whenever you first were like, hey, let's set a meeting aside just so we can talk about Carlie's Couch and all the stuff that we're doing. And those meetings help so much just to make sure we're both on the same page, to make sure that we're communicating about things, but also to, set our vision and make sure we're doing all the things that we need to be doing, like having that. At first I was like, but we're not filming that day. I was like mad confused, but
oh, really?
It helped a lot. Yeah, I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
Do some business development out
right?
here.
And it's funny because I do that with other people, but on my own stuff, I was like, but it helps so much just to have that consistency, like knowing that we're going to talk and like thinking through what those things can be. Like even the meeting of the minds has been invaluable to the stuff we're doing.
Yeah. And so like getting people on your team is cool, but then like, how do you move forward and grow, get things done? Again, I think you just need to have the clear communication, and you have to have the right platforms for communication. So like now we do have email, Slack, Asana that we put the projects in, Google Drive where we can all go in and edit things. So you have to have all those things in place for people to be able to work together well. I just had to get a conference line because like I tried to do everybody on one of the Google Hangout calls, and it was like kind of janky with the sound. So I had to figure that out. I like using Doodle, which is a program that I'm going to throw out there for all y'all to try to use. If you have a group meeting, you can do a doodle poll where you can put everybody's name in, put multiple times, send it out instead of all the emails like, hey, does this time work? Does this time work? Does this time work?
Annoying.
And making everybody like get together. So each person can check off the times they can do, X off what they can't do, and now I get something back that shows me when does everybody correlate. And so just things like that are just easier for just keeping us on like regular schedule, meetings, having deadlines set and clear. And at the end of the day, like my teams for me do well if I do well. Like I'm the biggest like liability, I think, in all of my teams. And that and that's why I said I was trying to combat by giving more responsibility and delegating even more, right? Because I don't want them waiting for me to do something, or we can't move forward if it's on me. So anytime I feel like that, that's when I know that's where I need to delegate more. Because I'm like the biggest hold up sometimes, where it's like they need an okay from me, or they need me to start this and then they'll finish it. Or that's what I used to do, is like, well, I'll get my thoughts down and then me, you edit it from there or whatever. And now it's like, no, you get your thoughts down and then I'll go in, right? So it's just how can I be effective and see where am I slipping, or where am I slowing things up, or where are there slow ups period in this whole cycle, and then being able to identify that and do things differently.
And we could do a whole episode, and we might, on building on highly functioning and like effective teams. But I think like building an effective team, like it starts with that foundation. Like everybody has that buy-in. They understand the vision, at least on some level, enough to be here. But making sure that you have those systems, you have that accountability and communication, like able to ask questions and speak their mind. I think that's super important. And this has been really helpful for me. I'm like, I was taking notes, thinking about, how I can, be okay with releasing and delegating things, but also like just getting clear on what expanding the team can be like. Because in my head, it was always like, well, I don't have everything ready yet. It's not all this, but it doesn't have to be all that. It literally could be someone just helping me finish some tasks.
And also understanding that with your team, even though you have a team and you're delegating, it's still all your responsibility. Like, you still have to take complete ownership. Like, if anything drops, it's my fault. Like, whatever it is, like, it's my fault. And so it's always, if I could take ownership of it, then we can always move forward a lot easier. When things go well, like, thanks to the team, like, y'all did that, right? But if things aren't going well, being able to take ownership of that as well. So it's kind of the same thing as you doing it by yourself, except now you do have a little more like about like how are people going to do things. It's not the same way as you, but half the time I get surprised, or I realize like there's so many better ways to do things than what the hell I thought I was doing. You know what I mean? So it really is kind of like a little bit of a risk and like a jump of faith for that. But at the end of the day, you're freed up to do so much more. And I honestly look at my team as the CEOs of like me. Cause like I said, I'd be like, all right, what do I need to do with this? Like, and they remind me of deadlines and dates and stuff like that. Because my I guess my worst thing I would say is probably like the project management period. Like just the physical, like here's the layout of the plan, and here's the dates and like planning and all that. Cause I just be doing stuff. Right. And I like the ideas and the strategy and all of those things. And I do like planning, but I don't stick to stuff. Like, if I wake up today and I feel like, man, this is going to be my chill day, like, it's going to be my chill day. So they are good because they help me with that. And that, I think that is something that I'm looking for right now is the project manager, or more of a project manager who can be just super like on that. All they do is just like, hey, this is the time, this is the resources we need. And just keep everybody on like, by this day, do you got this? Do you got this? Do you got this? Like not necessarily executing the marketing or the stuff that we're doing. So I need that. And then I'm talking to a guy about video editing that I need in-house right now too. So as you go, I think you bring in those things, because sure, I could do that. Like I could put a little lower third on some video and all that, but it's like, for what?
And if it's like you, like now I'm thinking about being back on the board, like if it's you and, your friends or the board or all of those, it's like figuring out who can do those best and making sure that gets delegated and having that project manager. Shout out to them on my team.
Yeah, because even with my projects where like the software and like groups, like it was my idea, but like I'm depending on them to come in with their ideas. But I was talking to one of them yesterday, actually. He's like, so when's the next meeting? Like, I'm not even sure what we're supposed to do. So I'm like, shoot, all right. Like, you have to be clear, like at the end of your talk, like, all right, we're meeting again when? Like on Wednesday. What do you need to have by then? Being really clear. Like, I feel like we want to steer away from like looking bossy or telling people what to do. And it's like, bro, like nothing happens if you don't set like straight up what's your steps. Like at the end of any meeting or at the end of any like team talk or whatever, it's like everybody should be clear on what they're doing. And I think a lot of times we play around with that instead of just being really clear.
Yeah.
And so even still, it's like, oh, all right, to me, I'm like, it's clear, but I did leave it kind of open because now I don't have to like rush to do my part either, but we need a clear deadline. So it's like, all right, even if, which is what we do a lot, like the day before, the night before, or the day of, like, then you're like, oh, let me do this, but it gets done because you have the day.
Yeah, which is helpful. Anything else?
I just think it's important, like I said, to be clear on what you want, be clear on the value you want to have, and to bring in people who have that and that you can respect. Like, you got to work with people that you respect and work with people who are good. And sometimes it doesn't work out and you have to like go different directions, which I've had to do multiple times. But yeah, every time is like a learning experience. So it's such a learning experience working with teams. And I would just say, as my like last bit of advice about it, is just make sure you're taking full ownership of it.
I love that. And mine is don't be afraid to have difficult conversations, especially if you are working with friends or people that you know building on a project rather than like hiring out. Like have those conversations, get to know each other and know that sometimes things get uncomfortable, but that's how we grow. That's how we get better. That's how we make shit happen. That's mine. The question of the week is, what is a tiny victory that you've accomplished this week?
Tiny? Man, I did so many big things.
Oh, well, then share a big one. Don't let me limit you.
No, I'm going to think of something chill. Tiny victory.
While you're thinking, a tiny victory for me, which seems like a big victory to me, is I've stuck to my routine. So working out, meditating, journaling, reading, like I have these things that I'm supposed to be doing every day. Mm-hmm.
Like for how long?
Oh,
like you stuck to it for a certain amount of time or something?
Well, just this week. Like if I think about this week, I've done it every day this week.
Mine was the same because like one of my big victories was I got is that I have a workspace that I'm working out of now.
Hey.
But my tiny victory, I guess that goes along with that, is that I always had this goal of like I want to get at least X amount of hours consistently, which for some reason I just don't ever do. Like I'll do a couple days hard, and then it's like I just slowly like fizzle out, which is right. Like my therapist is like, okay, like that's normal, but to me, I'm like, nah, I need to. You know, when you think about even people working like 40-hour weeks and stuff, it's like, nah, I want to put in more hours. And so like this week it has consistently, especially Wednesday. And, like, by the middle of the week, I was like, all right, I'm kind of on chill mode a little bit. Or, like, I want to just chill. But then I made sure, like, even, like, when I was working through the night, when, like, Carlie came over, I was like, all right, I wanted to get to this certain thing. So I was like, let me keep going until I get to that at least. So I have my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to where I got a certain amount of stuff done. That was important stuff. So I felt really good about that. So I'm going to keep that going for the rest of the week.
Shout out to that and congratulations on your workspace.
Thanks.
That's a big victory. So what is a tiny victory that you have accomplished this week? Add us Lextopia, CC Fierce on Instagram, Carlie Carpio on Twitter, and Carlie's Couch on both. We would love to celebrate with you.
Yeah, and ask us any questions you have about building a team, or if you have any advice, tips, or things that you've done about building a team, because I've reached out, and that's how I've had to get better at that, by reaching out to other friends who have businesses, and they have, you know, like, oh, you need this. What about an onboarding process and things I hadn't thought about, right? So I get a lot of the ideas and resources from that, from reading things like Tim Ferriss and Smart Passive Income and the podcasts and stuff I read or listen to and read books and stuff like that. They're always about, you know, just effectively moving forward with your business. And so I get a lot from that. So talk to people that you know with teams. If you have any ideas, hit us with them, because I'd love to hear like your thoughts on building a team. If you want to be on a team, hit me. But yeah, that's all I got for you for today. So that did kind of spark me to get ready to get into work for the day, I think.
Hey, that's what we here for.
Sick way. All right, see y'all.
Bye.